checking everyone in. Okay, guys, so welcome to our Lunch and Learn today. We are really excited to have Larinda Smith from Unbound Fort Worth with us today. I think everyone got to read the bio and know what she's going to be talking to us about. And as advocates, we know how serious the issue of sex trafficking and human trafficking can be, that we've had children trafficked, we've had parents trafficked, and so understanding how it impacts our community, understanding what the signs are to watch for, and understanding how we can help our children through this is really important. So I'm really excited to have Larinda, and her intern Courtney is with us as well today. So you guys wave. And so real quick, I'm going to give you guys a few announcements. Next week, we have Marco Quesada from the Department of Family and Protective Services joining us, and that's at noon, 12 p.m. And he's going to be talking about drugs, what the drug screens mean on our cases, what the numbers mean, how they can impact our children. So it's going to be really interesting. All the questions you have about substance abuse and substance use, then he is going to be able to address that. So that's next Tuesday. I'll be sending that link out to you probably this afternoon or tomorrow. We are going to have door prizes at the end as usual. So if you hang in to the very end, then we'll have Larinda draw some numbers for us, and we'll get some door prizes out to you guys. So as we normally do, we're going to utilize the chat box for questions until the very end. So if a question comes up that you don't want to forget, put it in the chat box so we won't forget. And then at the end, she'll actually have a time for Q&A where you can ask the questions as well. So Larinda is the Director of Outreach there at Unbound in Fort Worth, correct, Larinda?
Yes.
And so she does this a lot. She gets to go and speak. They do professional development. They speak to medical professionals. They speak to organizations, schools. I think they go basically all over the state, from what I could see, providing information for people about trafficking and the signs and what to watch. So we're really excited to have her and Courtney joining us today. And so, Larinda, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you, and you can share your screen whenever you want, and let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.
All right, that sounds great. I'll share my screen here in just a moment. But I just wanted to say hello also as a fellow Abilenian. I graduated from Cooper, and I'm also a CEU alumni, so go Wildcats. And so I'm just happy to be able to connect with my hometown and present this information to you all, because you are in a critical position to be able to identify individuals who are may not be being trafficked, but they could be close to exploitation. And so you work with such a vulnerable population, and just thank you so much for all of your efforts in really connecting with minors and being a support system for them. So thank you so much. I'm happy to be able to share this information. However, I will admit it can be a little difficult sometimes to take in this information, because it's dark. It's dark information, but the more that it is being projected into our society, the more it's coming to light. And so that's why we find it so important to get out into the community and really teach individuals about what this looks like in their community. We do go across the state. We have Unbounds in different locations. We've got offices in Waco, Bryan College Station, and Houston. Hopefully we'll be expanding out into West Texas at some point. But what's so interesting is about 9 months ago, Rebel and I had connected about potentially doing a training, and we were going to have to do it online. And the funny part of that, I was like, I'm not familiar with online trainings, and but I'm going to have to investigate it a little bit. And lo and behold, the world has made us very familiar with online training now. So I was like, hey, Rebel, I know how to do online training now. Okay, so getting into our presentation. Let's see. Let me try to share my screen here. All right, can everybody see it okay? You can give thumbs up if you, okay. You can also do the reaction buttons at the bottom. So first off, I'm curious, I'm curious how many individuals have actually seen a human trafficking presentation, and I'm gonna actually have to pull everybody up so I can see. So if you've seen a human trafficking presentation, if you'll on that little reaction button, you can do a thumbs up or you can do a thumbs up yourself. I'm just curious what that. Okay. All right. Great. Perfect. Okay. So let me move to the next slide. So human trafficking, what this is it's a crime that it's involving the exploitation of a person for labor or commercial sex. We'll get into a little more of what that looks like here in just a moment. If someone is under the age of 18, and they're like, for instance, if they're in the commercial sex industry, which would be like stripping, something of that sort, it's automatic trafficking. So if something is being exchanged for value in that person's exploitation, then it's automatic human trafficking. And I'm actually gonna move on to this one. This is what we call the TVPA broken down. It's the Trafficking Victims Protection Act is the federal law that was passed to protect victims of human trafficking. Now, trafficking has been happening for a very long time. It's just that now we actually have a name to put to it. And because I've even, I've done presentations where I've had individuals that came up to me and they're like, hey, this happened to me like 20 years ago, and so it's important now that we are recognizing it and holding those accountable that are causing it. Now, when you break down the federal law, you have an action, means, and purpose. And so the individuals who can be charged with human trafficking are those who are committing the action of recruiting, harboring, transporting, providing, obtaining, patronizing, soliciting, or advertising. So that could be someone who, even the person who is driving an individual to different appointments can be charged with human trafficking. The person that is a recruiter who is coming in trying to find young individuals to be involved in a trafficking situation. The person who's buying, and in fact, I know in Abilene that was a big situation earlier this year. And so they caught a prominent individual in society that was trying to buy someone. And so when you have these actions that are being done under the means of force, fraud, or coercion for commercial sexual exploitation or forced labor, that is where you have the definition of human trafficking. So legally, if someone is over the age of 18, now I know that you guys work with minors for the most part, but you also interact in society and know people over the age of 18. So I'm gonna hit on adults as well. If they're over the age of 18, legally, they have to prove that force, fraud, or coercion took place in order for the charge of human trafficking to take. And so, and of course, this is, but if they're under the age of 18, so if they're a minor, they don't have to prove that those three things took place. If someone bought a minor, or, you know, let's say they gave drugs in exchange for sex, or a place to stay in exchange for sex, or anything of that sort, it's automatic trafficking. They don't have to prove the force, fraud, coercion. So it makes it, you know, it can make it a little difficult when someone is an adult, and you know, like the investigative work that goes in, you know, law enforcement's having to prove all those things took place. And so, but that is the law broken down. Now, labor trafficking, I'm not really going to touch on this one as much, just because you guys won't see that as much as CASA advocates, but just to kind of shed some light on that. So someone's being forced or lied to as far as work. What we see a lot of times on this is individuals who might be in another country who answer an ad online that says, like, you know, hey, I can help you come to America for a better opportunity. And they think it's going to be this great thing. And then they get over here and they're stuck. And they're now having to work long, extended hours for very little pay, or all of their pay is going to the person who brought them over. And so they're caught in this trap. And so it can happen in that regard. I'm going to share with you in just a moment a situation where what it could look like in Abilene to have labor trafficking. But we see labor trafficking in, you know, construction, in the hotel industry, restaurants. There was a big case in the Dallas-Fort Worth area where there was a minor being labor trafficked at a very well-known restaurant in a very nice part of Dallas-Fort Worth. So it can really, I mean, it's everywhere. So sex trafficking is, of course, they're being manipulated and forced to have commercial sex or sex acts for something of value. So that could be money, it could be a place to stay, drugs, food. We've seen it before for food. And so these different things that they're receiving as something of value. Now, let's see. Okay. So this is what I put together as, because some people might say, well, what does that look like in Abilene? You know, how can you have labor trafficking and sex trafficking here? So this is an example of this. So on the left, of course, these are just images that I pulled. And so you can have a situation of labor trafficking where an individual is being trafficked at, let's say, a strip club, and being forced to work long hours. We see this here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and even with minors. Minors will work at a strip club because they can make money there very quickly. And so they're being forced to work hours, and then the person that's forcing them to work there is also selling them behind the scenes after they get off their shift. And so clients are coming and buying them, and then you have the sex trafficking. So that's a blend of those two that could, and these are just a potential situation, but this is how it can happen in a place like Abilene. You also have like illicit massage businesses. I know they had a bust in San Angelo of an illicit massage business where individuals who were from another country were being forced to, you know, work, as well as they were being forced to have sex. And so those are just examples of what that can look like. Now, it happens everywhere, of course, worldwide. And these are just statistics that they were able to kind of put a tangible number to. We think this number is actually a lot greater, because people aren't, you know, that are being trafficked aren't going around like, hey, count me in your statistics, you know. So 40.3 million people worldwide. And so that's, you know, an incredible amount of people. And of course, there's different, we talk about labor and sex trafficking here, but there are other types of trafficking, like there is like organ trafficking and stuff like that. So that also is included in those counts. $150 billion annual industry. And I mean, really and truly, we believe that will overtake the drug trade, because people can make more money, and that's what we see. They're turning away from drugs and going towards trafficking, sex trafficking specifically, because on drugs, once you sell a drug, you actually have to recreate that drug. And with a person, you can sell them over and over and over, and you make more money. And so that's what they turn to. Like we can see an individual being sold here 15 times a night easily, so that's why these corrupt individuals are turning towards that. 313,000 victims in the state of Texas. And that was based on a UT study in 2016. It came out actually in 2017. But in that same study, they found 79,000 minors and youth involved in trafficking in the state of Texas. This next thing, I'm going to show a video, and I'm hoping that you can hear the sound on it. But this is a video of an example of how a minor can easily get manipulated by someone that they're meeting online, because they're already in a vulnerable state. This is based on a true story here in this area, and so it really shows like they go from this vulnerable place of being exploited by their father, and they're now being manipulated by someone else, and how it leads to that. So I'm going to show that. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, you might have to check.
Is it playing?
Share audio.
Oh, sorry.
On there too.
Is there a? Let me make sure I'm doing this correctly.
Is this from your slideshow?
It is. It's on PowerPoint.
Let me see here. When you share your screen, you have to select share audio, computer audio. So you might have to go to your share options.
Okay.
And then share audio. Let's see if it gives me the option. I don't know if it'll let me or not.
Sorry, guys.
That's okay. It's
There's
a learning
audio
process
settings.
for all of us.
All right. And I think this is my.
Yeah, go on your share screen. Oops.
Okay.
You were.
Was I on the correct one? Okay.
I think so. And then go down where it says on the share screen on your left. And let's see if it has the audio on there.
It does not.
Go back up on the video and audio then, and let's see if it's on either one of those again. Try the advanced tab down there and see if that's where it is. I've done it, but I don't know how to tell someone else where to find it. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I can show the video without the sound.
It might be at the top.
Let's see.
Like where it says
up here.
Viewing Larinda Smith's screen. Like,
I'm so sorry, everyone.
It's okay. We're all right.
Oh wait, let's see. Maybe it's under share. Oh, computer sound. There we go. Perfect.
Yay. I knew we'd get there.
Okay, here we go. right. So, like I said, it just shows the, where an individual is being abused by her stepfather and looking for someone to help meet that need of loneliness and someone to love her, and it leads to her meeting someone online and connecting with that individual. And so that's a scenario that we see over and over in this area. So, and definitely something that could potentially be happening with individuals that you are connected with. Now, in the state of Texas, of course, individuals can be trafficked in one location or they can be moved around. We call this the Texas Triangle, where, individuals can be moved if they are with a pimp who moves them around. But of course, those Texas highways really make for a way for people to get individuals out of the state quickly. And I know Abilene is a prime location for that. I know that there's been victims identified at, even at Merkel or at the Thai truck stop and places like that, that they're moving them through the state, and specifically minors who have met someone online and they're traveling with that individual. So, there's different things that can happen that can lead to this trafficking. So like I said, you can be in one place and trafficked out of a home, or you can be moved around. These are just risk factors that make you at an increased risk for trafficking. Specifically on the sex trafficking side, homelessness, the history of abuse or exploitation, if you use drugs, involvement in the commercial sex industry, or mental illness. But of course, anyone is vulnerable to being trafficked. These are make for higher risk factors, but anyone can be a victim of human trafficking. So the runaway is someone who's run away from home, of course, is going to be at an increased risk because they have needs that need to be met. And so in this Polaris study, 64% of survivors reported being homeless or experiencing unstable housing at the time they were recruited into trafficking. So that's a huge percentage of individuals who, 64% of survivors were homeless or unstable housing. So they're looking for a place to stay, they're looking for a couch to sleep on. And when somebody says like, hey, you can stay at my place, and it's a nice individual who seems to have, good intentions, it really can put them into a vulnerable place for being trafficked when that individual says, okay, now that you've stayed at my place, you've got to, do something to earn your keep, so to speak. And let's see, keep moving. No, we're limited on time, I'm so sorry. So like I said, they're looking for those unmet desires and needs for their victims. Recruiters can be a pimp, but sometimes like larger trafficking rings and things like that, they'll have recruiters, and sometimes those recruiters are actually they were victims. They were being trafficked, and their way to get out is to become a recruiter. Now, they can hang out at different places, and let me clarify right now, I know there's been a lot of social media going around about I was shopping at the mall and this person was following me, and there was another person waiting out in the parking lot to and I think they were gonna snatch me and traffic me. And not to say that you can't be stalked in a shopping center or anything like that. More than likely, that's a situation of they're looking to rob someone. If you've got a nice purse you're holding, they may be eyeing your purse, not you. The chances of that happening are so slim that they're actually looking to take you, because traffickers, they don't want to be noticed by the public, and they're not going to do something that makes them able to be seen. So they're not going to be cruising the parking lot waiting to snatch someone or anything like that. They're going, recruiters and traffickers themselves, they're going to be the ones that you were like, they were such a nice person, and you know, they groom people, you know, they're master manipulators. And so you're not going to see it coming, kind of a situation. And so to those we say, you know, be careful, always have your eyes watching to, you know, see where you're, you know, make sure you're being safe, but the chances of that happening are just very, very slim. These are the actual recruitment methods that Polaris put together. So a romantic situation is going to be the highest recruitment method into trafficking. So it's going to be a boyfriend. What we see a lot of times, it can be a boyfriend-girlfriend. So let's say a 22-year-old meets a 17-year-old, and he's like, hey, you know, I want to be with you forever. And, you know, in order for you to be on your own, we've got to have a place to live, but neither of us have a good job. So so for this one time, so that we can make rent, which I know this, you know, anyway, they're wanting to get married. So anyway, what they're going to do is he's going to say, you know, for this one time, so we can have some money, if you will just sleep with my friend this one time, just this one time. And so they think it's just going to be this one time, and then it ends up being like, hey, one more time, can you do this to help us make some money? And so it becomes this recurring thing, and that's where they find themselves getting stuck in a situation like that. It can be for male victims. We see a lot of times what's called survival sex, where it is they are just needing money, and they get manipulated into being trafficked because they're trying to just have some food, have some money to make rent, have a place to stay, that kind of thing. So we do see that happening as well. There also are like job advertisements, things like that. So, you know, like become a model, and they think they're going down to be a model, and that's not the situation. It's actually a trafficking situation. There is family-related trafficking that takes place, where a parent or guardian is selling the child. We see that quite often, and they're selling the child to make money to pay for things. So that is definitely something that can happen. The grooming techniques, this is just a 6-step process that John Clark with Operation Texas Shield put together, where someone can be groomed into trafficking. So it's going to be that person who comes in, who wants to be the friend, who introduces someone to maybe some drugs like weed, like real minor kind of drugs at first, and they build this relationship with this person where they're going to start taking them away from people who actually trust and want to take care of them. They start that isolation to where they're like, you know, your family doesn't care about you. I'm the only one that cares about you. And so that individual thinks, you know, like, well, I can't trust these individuals. I need to trust the person I'm with. And then that's where the exploitation is taking place, where they start desensitizing them to being sold. So they might not sell them right off. They may be in the same room as someone being sold. And so they learn, well, that happens, and it becomes normal to them. And then it's like, okay, now it's your turn. And by that point, they're kind of trapped in that situation. 45% of people entering what we call the life met their trafficker face-to-face, and 55% met online. That's just an incredible study. 55% met online. So it just shows the power of the internet, of individuals meeting today. Social media, gaming, and sexting are all ways that can make individuals potentially at risk. So social media, they're meeting people, like people are sending them messages. I know even my own niece who's 13, like her, you know, her social media accounts, it's all about the likes, like how many followers she can get. And you know, I'm like, do you know this person? And she was like, well, no, but I think they go to my school. And it's like, okay, well, they don't need to be following you, you know, like, so having those conversations, and it's hard because that is what it's about. It's all about the likes. Gaming, that can lead to, specifically like with the headsets, where befriending takes place, where information gets shared that a kid, so let's say like a young boy is gaming, and the person on the other end is gaining information about that kid, and he doesn't realize he's giving it away, but he's giving it away in little snippets. And so that individual's building this whole profile of this child to where he can use that to manipulate him. And so we see it happening on gaming. And then of course, sexting is something that you guys may have already heard about, and also had issues, you know, even with the youth that you're working with, because it's everywhere. We go to the high schools and talk about it, and it's just common day practice for the kids to do that. And trying to help them understand that once you send an image, it's out. I mean, like, you can't bring something back that's already been sent. And so anyway, that's another way, you know, young people are being exploited, and of course they're not going into it thinking that's what's going to happen to them. You know, they're just like sending a picture that, you know, to their partner or whatever. And so and then that person decides to send it on to other people. So it's a lot of times innocent, but it can lead to someone being exploited. It does happen to boys. We do have victims of human trafficking who are boys. Of course, like I said, like, homelessness is the high risk factor. Foster care, substance abuse, you know, just that they're not being, you know, looked after properly. And so anyway, it leads to this place of vulnerability of being trafficked. So a lot of people will ask, well, why don't people just leave the situation? You know, majority of the time they're not being, you know, like, tied up. Like, you see the pictures of someone like being bound together with tape over their mouth. Like, it's not always like that. It can happen that way, but a lot of times they're kind of free to go, but they're emotionally being manipulated. And so the person that's trafficking them is telling them, no one loves you. I'm the only person that will, you know, take you in. I'm the only person that loves you. Like, you'll never make it on your own. If you go out there, the police are going to arrest you. They're feeding them all of these lies that they mentally have so much control. Like, we had an individual who was being her trafficker was in a far other state than where she was, and he still had that mental control over her that she was fearful to do anything because she was going to get caught. And so it just shows that the stronghold that has, you know, they're going to be placed in foster care. They're going to be put in jail. They're going to be deported. They're going to, we also have the other factor of violence. A lot of traffickers are very violent people, and, you know, they're afraid of getting beaten, or they will say, if you do anything, I will, you know, kill your family. I'll kill you. You know, there's these different things on top of, let's say, a person who's had a child, then that's a whole other factor. There's also shame and guilt around this that, you know, it's embarrassing, and they don't want to say anything because, you know, they feel like they got themselves into the situation, which is such a lie, because, you know, it was manipulation. And that's why I was saying earlier, like, that's the tactic that they're going to use, and the trafficker is going to feed into that. You know, you did this, you were the one that asked for this. they may not understand what's happening, that they are being trafficked. And then on top of that, because of the trauma they've experienced, they may be angry and viewed as delinquents and troublemakers. You have to understand the victim mindset. They have been exposed to just a very complex form of trauma. And, you know, we have situations where we go in and the individual greets us with, you know, a couple of cuss words and, you know, you can get out of my life. And we just continue to be a presence in their life, just like I'm sure that you guys experience as advocates, that you just continue to press in and be the support system that they need, even if they don't know that they need it. And so that's where we find ourselves in being in that trauma-informed care. So yes, it can definitely be messy, as you all know. Things to look for is going to be like sudden truancy, a change in their behavior at school. There is like a change in what they're wearing. They go from wearing just normal clothes to wearing maybe like, you know, just very provocative type clothing. They are hanging around with older people, like an older girl, because girls can be recruiters. So it could be older girl or older guy, and they want to spend all their time with the individual. And so they are running away from home, the situation. Gang involvement, they've got bruises and whatnot that they're trying to hide. They're constantly like, you know, looking around them, making sure, you know, they're scared of what could be around them. They've got large amounts of cash on them, or they, you know, just have kind of like what it's saying, the slips of paper with names and phone numbers on it and dollar amounts and things like that. So these are things that are going to be signs that something is going on. It may not be trafficking. It could be, I mean, you think about bruises and marks and things, that could be child abuse, you know. So looking for these things to help as red flags. So what do we want people to know? We want them to know that there's hope for them. There is a way out. There's organizations that want to help them. There's people that want to help them. And so we want to get that message to them that there is hope for them. So what not to do from your end: if someone starts sharing information about what's going on, don't act shocked. Don't go like, oh my gosh, that is happening to you. And I know you guys have probably been through a lot of training on this, because, you know, like there's some very, very horrible things that these children are experiencing. And so, but don't act shocked. Don't confront the child in front of others or anything like that. Only talk to the individuals that need to be told what's going on. There could be a safety factor involved in that, with that child, that it, you know, other people don't need to know what's going on. And also it can be a legal thing. It could be a federal case that we don't need everyone knowing all of the details about this. Let's see, don't make any promises that you can't keep. Or actually, these are what not to do. But anyway, you know what I'm saying. Like, so we're not making promises we can't keep. And don't ignore your instincts. What you do need to do is take action. So do something. If your gut is telling you like, hey, something's not right, do something about it. Don't let it pass by and be like, well, I'm not really sure. It's always better to go ahead and move forward with it. And if it wasn't what was going on, then, you know, at least you've reacted. Be sure and follow the protocol set before you, and that you've been given to follow. And, you know, if you are asking questions, make sure like non-judgmental questions. And these are just some examples. You know, can you tell me what's happening in your life right now? If they've got a wad of money, and this may be something you guys can't ask. I'm not real familiar with, CASA and how, what questions you are allowed to ask, but, like, how are you making so much money? Or, and, is anyone pressuring you to do something you don't want to do? Asking questions that are just simple, kind of direct questions. These are just some ground rules for interaction, just making sure to be non-judgmental and kind. Address the emergency needs first, like, what the basic needs of what that individual needs. Make sure it's a safe environment for that individual to talk to you. Give time. Sometimes there can be a rush, but make sure to have time to talk to that individual. Be flexible. If you're wanting to, like, you may be like, I want them to tell me what's going on. Like, it may not happen, in that situation. It may be at a later time, but just build that rapport. Using that youth-friendly language as you're talking to them. Body language, make sure you're not like, like what, watch how you're portraying yourself. And not putting in those personal references of like, well, when I was little, this, that kind of thing. Just allowing that individual to talk and being a good listener, which goes into best practices. And I'm going to check my time. I know we're running low on time here. So definitely, if you have a situation where there's a language barrier, make sure you're using a professional interpreter in that regard. Don't use a friend or relative, or if, even if you're talking with a guardian or anything like that, make sure that there's a professional interpreter. Use the same wording, like even if you're reporting, use the same wording that they use. If they call that individual their boyfriend, don't say like their trafficker. Just say they said their boyfriend. And even don't correct, when they're telling you, don't correct their terminology to them. And be open to those unfamiliar and sometimes very scary stories. And then, of course, the trauma-informed, non-judgmental approach, giving them room to say what they need to say. We want to communicate hope, that they have rights, they're not alone, and that they are entitled to services, that they can get help. This is just a quick little thing about Unbound, how we approach human trafficking. We have survivor advocacy, so we have advocates that respond 24/7 to crisis calls or referral calls. So we go to hospitals, police stations, CPS. They'll call us when they have a victim of trafficking, and we have minors through adults, so we take care of the whole spectrum, male and female. We do professional trainings. We're training medical professionals and school staff. And then we also have the prevention and awareness factor. So going out and doing community presentations, we're going to schools and talking to youth and making sure that they, understand what this looks like for them. And it's been just absolutely incredible, the response that we've received through doing that. And even on the prevention awareness factor, like talking to students, like we might not identify a trafficking victim, but we've had individuals come to us after presentations and, and something is happening in their life that they've been scared to say something. And this is encouragement for them that they have a safe person to talk to. So that has been just super beneficial and encouraging. These are numbers that you can call if you suspect human trafficking. Of course, this is, like I said, follow your protocol for CASA, but the National Human Trafficking Hotline, you can call that or text "Be Free" to that number. And you can go to their website and also submit it there. If it's an emergency, always call 911. If it's an unsafe situation, that's the best route to take. I did put our information on there, but right now our advocates only serve Tarrant and Denton counties. So we wouldn't be able to send an advocate out to your location. However, we do have connections throughout the state that if you ever had questions, we could definitely try and help you figure out those answers. All right, I'm going to stop sharing so we can address questions. All right.
Okay, guys, so make sure if you have questions, if you want, you can put them in the chat box. And while they're thinking of theirs, I had one up front that I put up there, Larinda, about, and you kind of hit on it, because I know that we've seen around our community, we'll see a van load of kids, teenagers, that are kind of going home to home, or they have them out selling things.
Yes.
Is that a typical way that kids are trafficked?
You know, it can be, it can definitely be, they're being taken advantage of, and it can lead to them being exploited in other ways. They definitely probably aren't making very good money for the work that they're putting in. It depends on if they're being forced, like once they get into that situation, are they being, you know, forced to work these long hours and put in those situations. You know, so it can definitely lead to that. I would never recommend anyone doing those because you are taken advantage of in a lot of ways when that happens. And interesting enough, as far as the kids in the van and everything, it kind of reminded me of something that we discussed here in Fort Worth, and that was, you know, we have these apartment complexes where refugees are living, and they have programs for the kids in the complexes, you know, that, you know, they do activities, and they bring in churches to provide these activities. So these kids are getting adjusted to all of these adults coming in constantly in their lives, doing all these fun things with them. And what they didn't realize were people were taking advantage of that. So they had individuals who were driving up in vans and saying like, hey, let's go to McDonald's. And all the kids are just piling in the van because they're so used to everyone coming out there and just participate. You know, it's, you just do the fun things. And these kids were piling into a van to go to McDonald's, and that was the grooming process. They're like, you know, come with us, and, you know, we're gonna do all these fun activities. And so they really had to rethink about, like, how do we allow churches to serve the, you know, in these populations, and but do it in a manner where we're teaching kids about safety and who to trust and things of that sort. So
Good point.
yeah.
Well, guys, what questions do you have? Does anybody have anything? Marcy does. Okay, Marcy, hold on. See if you can unmute yourself. It's not, there you go.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I would like to know a little bit about your organization, if you're willing to share that. Like, are you like a ministry, or are you just a nonprofit?
Right. We started as a ministry of a church. We are now a nonprofit. We are state funded and supported through donations. So our advocacy program and youth prevention programs, those are all done through state funded grants. And then everything else we do is through donations. And this fall, we're actually opening a drop-in center for trafficked and exploited youth. And that will be a place, because right now, so let's say we have a minor, the only place that they can go is to the detention center, or there's a shelter, ACH youth shelter. And so this is going to be an opportunity for us to have a place to take them for just like a couple of hours to kind of regroup, because sometimes we find ourselves in these situations at 3 o'clock in the morning, and there's just not a whole lot you can do at 3 a.m. So it's going to be a place where they can come and rest and do laundry and kind of regroup and evaluate what services we need to go with from that direction. So that's going to be our next project coming up. But that's really we've been around, we've officially been here since 2017. And so last year we received our nonprofit status.
Good. So we had one question on here about at what point do you involve the law enforcement if you suspect trafficking?
Great question. Oh, okay, if they are over the age of 18 and trafficking, you suspect trafficking is taking place, you cannot call law enforcement on their behalf. Now, if there's a situation where there's an unsafe place, like that person is being beaten or whatever, definitely call 911. However, if you just suspect, you can't call them on their behalf. Now, if that individual says, I want to press charges and I want to talk to law enforcement, then that's when law enforcement can get involved. If they're under the age of 8, if they're 17 or under, automatically call law enforcement. Or, like, of course, with CASA, follow their protocol. I'm going to keep repeating that over and over. But definitely, law enforcement should be first before any other organization. So, like, we tell that to our hospitals that we're communicating with, that don't call Unbound for a minor first. Let law enforcement and CPS contact us.
Yes, and that's a good point, because we are mandatory reporters, as you guys know, and so we have a responsibility to report through the Texas hotline. But if a child's being trafficked, then I think you have 2 calls to make. You've got to do the intake call for CPS, but you've got to call the police, because their situation could be very fluid in that position. I'm assuming where they are right now may not be where they are tomorrow or something. Could that be the case? Or
yeah.
So that would be something to talk to your supervisor about. Call them as soon as you get out of, like she said, you don't want to panic, you don't want to scare the kids, stay calm, and then just as soon as you can, make that phone call to your supervisor, fill them in. But then you're going to report it through the CPS hotline, and then you would probably call law enforcement immediately, but your supervisor will guide you through that. But don't listen to what Larinda said. Listen to your gut. If something's not right, it's usually not right. So talk to your supervisor, talk to the case manager for the child, whoever you need to, but don't ignore it.
And I also want to make sure too that you understand that we're not rescuing. I mean, like, we're trying to get the child out of that situation, but we try to refrain from using the word rescue, because we want that individual to be empowered, that they, that they can get out of that situation. And especially, it takes a couple of times, most of the time, for someone to actually leave trafficking. Even minors, like, we'll get them out of that situation and then they run back. And then we get them out and they run back. And it takes, they said, average 7 times before they'll eventually say, okay, I'm ready for help. And so just to make sure you're aware that it's not going to be this cut and dry, like, bring them out and they're like, oh, thank you for rescuing me. That is definitely not typically what it looks like by any means.
All right, good question and good response. So what else? Anybody else have a question? Well, Larinda, if they send in some questions, I'll be happy to email them to you. And then I share the link to the video so I could include any questions or responses. Is there anything else you would like to add?
Just, like I said before, thank you for the service that you guys are providing to the community. And I know that, that you're an individual that they can trust. And it's so good for them to have that individual in their life. And, just keep listening to those gut instincts. And yeah.
Well, and one thing I did want to add is one of our gentlemen on our board, his name is John Graham, and he is a detective with the Sheriff's Department. And he used to be one of them that posed as the 12-year-old girl online. He's kind of handing that off to some of the younger detectives now. But a year ago, about a year and a half ago, there was a young girl that was being trafficked that they actually found, and the police were able to get her away from the person she was with. And they were here at our Walmart out on I-20. And they were not, she was not from our area, was not one of our cases or anything like that, but they rescued her. I mean, you know, just using their,
Right, yeah.
just saying, but they took her back to Dallas, to the Metroplex, and returned her to family. And I don't know all the details, but a week, 10 days later, I see on the news about this girl who was found murdered. And it was that girl. And apparently her mom was part of the trafficking. And when she turned her back over to mom was pressured. These people are out to prove a point, and 2 young girls, including that girl, were murdered so they could prove a point. So even for us as human beings to understand that this is going on in our community, it happens here. It does. And to be aware of that and to keep our eyes open, to listen to our gut. If something's not right, report it, call, do whatever we have to do, because even if they're not our kids from our community, there's someone else's kids, or there's someone else's daughter, or someone else's mother or son. So I just think it's really important for us to be aware of the seriousness of this and how widespread the problem is, so that we can be part of the solution. So.
I think too, you know, a lot of individuals will think, well, it's people coming in from other countries, and that is happening. But you know, at Unbound, like almost, I would say 99% of our cases are domestic. They're people right here in Fort Worth, or individuals from other states who were trafficked through here. And so, and of course, the internet is making it very prevalent that, you know, individuals are being even sold, you know, and pictures of them are being sold in other countries. You know, it's just, it really makes it widespread. And and let me tell you, it's happening small town. When I say small town, like less than 1,000 population, we're seeing it here in this, like North Texas, these small towns where kids are wanting to make friends and making the wrong friends online. And so even homeschool, we've had homeschool children being trafficked who met someone online and then went to meet them. And so it's just because kids are in public school doesn't mean, you know, or homeschool doesn't mean that they're protected.
Well, Larinda and Courtney, thank you guys for being with us today. And I think it's just valuable information. Her website is in the email that I sent out, so feel free to check out their website. I can pass along her contact information so that you can reach out if you have more questions. Oh, wait a minute. Here, we did have one more question. What medical examination is made of the child if they're subjected to that type of abuse? Would that be the same exams?
Yeah, and we allow them to, you know, of course, they do everything first before they bring in Unbound to do any questioning, and actually we don't even question, we just offer to help however they need help. So, but yeah, it'd be sane.
And that's the same thing for us, guys. Remember, we don't do the exam. We don't do the investigation. We get the basics. They outcry. We get the information. We call the authorities. We don't want to do anything that would taint that forensic exam or that SANE exam or any investigation. So just be very careful that you get the basics so you can report it, but you don't get into that interrogation or that forensic type exam. But that's a good question, Eddie. Thank you. So guys, I'm going to let Larinda pick a number between 1 and 21 for me.
All right, 18.
And Miss Sue, are you still on here, Sue Thomason? Yes, Sue is. Okay, Sue, you get our Casa pens. Yay. And then we have one more between 1 and 21.
7.
7. Michael Jones. and these are up here with your names on them. So I can't mail these. I mailed out the gift cards early in the season, the season for the Zoom stuff, but they're up here at the office with your name on them. So, all right, guys. Well, that is the end of our training. Larinda, thank you so much for joining us today. And it was very informational. It was really relevant, and we appreciate you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate your patience as I navigated everything. And I will say, guys, it's hard to do a presentation when you can't see faces. You're like, I'm just going to look at this little dot right here on my computer.
Yeah. You feel like you're just staring at nobody there. But well, guys, that's all we have for today. Remember, mark your calendar for next Tuesday, 12 p.m. And we'll have Mark Casada from the department here to talk about drugs and substance abuse in our cases. So thank you, guys. Larinda, thank you again.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And I will be sending out the email for the recording.